In the 12th year of King Aldric's reign, when frost bit hard and graves were shallow from overuse, men spoke the name Garin Vale with equal parts gratitude and unease. If a ghoul dug beneath churchyards, Garin burned it out. If wolves with human eyes prowled lambing fields, Garin tracked them through snow and returned with pelts no honest beast had worn. If some barrow thing whispered from old stones and children sickened after hearing it, Garin entered alone and came back pale, bloodied, and paid. He was the sort of man villages praised while the danger lasted and avoided once it had passed. Broad-shouldered, scarred, and stern as a gallows beam, he wore blackened mail beneath a weather cloak and carried 3 knives, an ash spear, and a sword notched by years of unpleasant work. Gray had begun in his beard before age demanded it. His eyes held the fixed watchfulness of someone who no longer expected gentleness from the world. Once, they said, he had laughed often. That had been before the plague. His wife Mara died in the red fever 5 winters earlier, along with half the lane where they lived. Garin buried her himself because no priest would come close enough to bless the dead. He spoke little afterward, then less. Whatever warmth had survived in him hardened into purpose. Some men drink grief. Some gamble it. Garin sharpened his into steel. He took monster work because monsters were simpler than mourners. They had shapes, they bled, they could be ended. People, by contrast, continued. He came to Fenmere in late autumn, summoned by a boy riding hard on a lame horse. The village stood on raised earth beside a drowned stretch of marshland where reeds choked black water and pale lights were said to drift after dusk. Doors were barred before sunset. Livestock pens had been moved inward. No one met his eyes long. "The witch lives yonder," said Elder Tom, pointing toward the swamp with 2 fingers as if afraid a full hand might draw notice, "in the crooked house on stilts." "What has she done?" Garin asked. Tom swallowed. "Milk sours when she looks at it. Men lose their way near her reeds. Old Janek went to curse her and came back speaking to walls. Marta's babe had fever until the witch smiled at it. Then it worsened." "That last part sounds like fever," the elder flinched. "She charms tongues too." "Has she killed anyone?" A pause. "No." "Taken children?" "No." "Cursed crops?" "Not exactly." Garin stared. "Then why am I here?" The villagers shifted. At last a woman near the back whispered, "Because she knows things." That explained more than they intended. Fear often wore many masks. Envy was one of them. Still, Garin had learned not to dismiss tales outright. Many horrors arrived first as gossip. "Describe her." "Beautiful," said one man before crossing himself. "Wrong," said another. "Too young, too old. She has black eyes, she has golden hair." "She called me by name," muttered Janek, the one who spoke to walls. Useful, Garin thought. Utterly useless. He accepted half payment in advance and a pallet in the smithy. At dawn he entered the marsh. Fenmere Marsh breathed rot and memory. Mist lay low over dark pools, trees rose twisted from the water, roots like grasping fingers. Insects hummed despite the cold. More than once Garin glimpsed shapes in the fog that proved to be reeds. More than once reeds proved to be something else. He marked his path with chalk on trunks and bits of red cloth tied high where floodwater would not take them. By noon the swamp had swallowed all sound but dripping. By afternoon he found the first charm. It hung from a willow branch, bones of small birds knotted with blue thread and river shells. Not sinister, precisely, but deliberate. He burned it. Farther on he found jars sunk half in mud, each holding herbs, nails, teeth, or locks of hair sealed in wax. He smashed them. Toward evening he came upon the house. It stood on crooked stilts above a black pool, leaning slightly as if listening. Moss draped the roof. Bundles of drying plants hung beneath the eaves. Smoke rose thinly from a stone chimney. A narrow walkway of warped planks led to the door. No crows circled. No skulls adorned the fence. No shrieking came from within. The place was quiet enough to be dangerous. Garin crossed the planks with hand on sword. Halfway there he smelled lavender. He stopped so abruptly the boards creaked beneath him. Lavender had been Mara's scent. She kept dried bundles in their bedchamber, tied with blue ribbon. Even in plague days, when sweat and vinegar and sickness ruled the house, he had leaned close to her pillow and found it there. The smell deepened. Warm bread joined it. Then hearth smoke from a cottage long gone. Then rain on summer dust. His breath shortened. No. He knew glamour. New spirits that lured men with voices, phantoms that wore familiar faces, bog gas that muddled thought. He reached for the iron charm at his throat. His fingers found only skin. The thong had snapped sometime in the reeds. The door opened. Mara stood there. She wore the green wool dress she had owned before illness thinned her. Her dark hair fell braided over one shoulder. Color warmed her cheeks. Her eyes, kind gray eyes he had watched glaze in fever, met his with startled joy. Garin, his knees nearly gave. This is trickery, he told himself. This is poison in the air. This is grief with hands. Yet every scar of her face was true. The tiny white line above her brow from childhood. The dimple that appeared only when she fought a smile. The slight tilt of her head when uncertain. "Mara," he said, and the word broke. She crossed the threshold in 3 quick steps and took his face between her palms. "You took so long." He seized her wrists, warm, pulse beating. Not illusion, some desperate part of him cried. "Impossible." "I buried you," she smiled sadly. "Men bury many things before their time." The marsh spun softly around him. "Who are you?" "Your wife. You died." "I was taken. I came back. I waited." He wanted to strike her, to kiss her, to run, to kneel. Instead, he let her lead him inside. The cottage within was lit by candles and firelight. Herbs hung from rafters. Copper pots gleamed. Bread cooled on a board. Rain tapped somewhere, though the sky outside had been clear. It was not the lair of a hag. It was home. Their home, almost. A bench by the hearth where she once mended socks. The carved spoon he had whittled badly one winter. A blanket patched in the same red thread she favored. Memory arranged as furniture. "How?" he whispered. She poured wine into 2 cups. "Drink first. You are worn through." He did not touch it. She sat opposite him, patient as ever. "When fever took me," she said, "I wandered where the dead wander. But I loved you too fiercely to remain. There are old powers in lonely places. I bargained." With what? With waiting. The answer made no sense, and yet in that room sense felt like a lesser law. "I searched graves for signs," he said hoarsely. "I prayed. I burned temples that promised cures after death." "I know. You know? I saw you." He covered his face. For 5 years he had spoken to no one of the nights he woke reaching across cold sheets, of the rage that followed dawn, of taking contracts not for coin but because killing something seemed preferable to missing her. Her hand touched his wrist. "I know." He looked up weeping and did not care. She moved beside him then, folding him into her arms as she had once after his brother died in war. He shook like a child. Her fingers stroked the back of his neck. He inhaled lavender and wood smoke and nearly surrendered all suspicion forever. "I was so angry," he whispered. "You are still angry." "I had nothing else. You have me now." The words entered every hollow place in him. He kissed her, at first with grief, then with hunger starved half a decade. She answered with equal heat, drawing him toward the narrow bed curtained in linen. Armor buckles fell clattering to the floor. Sword belt loosened. Old scars met remembered hands. The intimacy that followed was not youthful frenzy, but reunion sharpened by mourning. He touched her as if confirming each inch against oblivion. She welcomed him with laughter, softened by tears. The years between them seemed to burn away in candlelight. For the first time since plague bells rang over their town, Garin felt warmth unguarded. He slept with his head upon her breast. He woke to darkness and pressure at his throat. Mara straddled him. In her raised hand gleamed a knife of black bone. Her smile was unchanged. Her eyes were not gray. They were black to the whites. Garin jerked, but sleep and enchantment had made him slow. The blade plunged beneath his ribs. Pain flared white-hot. He roared and threw her sideways, crashing from the bed. Blood poured warm down his belly. He snatched for the sword that was not there. The room writhed. Walls stretched taller. Herbs hanging from rafters became strings of finger bones. Bread on the board collapsed into mold. Candles guttered green. Mara rose laughing. The laugh deepened, layered, became many voices speaking at once. Her limbs lengthened, fingers sharpened, hair streamed like swamp weed, skin grayed and cracked. Beauty remained in outline only, cruelly preserved. The witch, not old, not bent, not warded, young as desire, lovely as regret. "You wore her," Garin gasped. "I wore you," she purred. "All men carry their own bait." He lunged barehanded, catching her wrist before the second strike. Strength surged through her thin frame like cables drawn taut. They grappled across the floor slick with his blood. You fed on the village? Fear, shame, secret wishes, such rich meals. Why me? She leaned close enough that he smelled peat and graves. Because rage preserves a man beautifully, and because you loved well once. He head-butted her savagely. Bone cracked. She hissed. They staggered into the hearth, scattering embers. Garin seized a burning log and drove it into her side. Flesh smoked. She screamed, a sound that made the marsh outside answer in ripples. But blood loss was stealing him. His knees weakened. She recovered first. With sudden grace, she stepped behind him, drew his own discarded hunting knife from the floor, and slid it across his throat. Warmth left in a rush. He fell to hands and knees. The cottage dimmed. She crouched before him now in Mara's shape once more, unmarred, sorrowful. Cruelty is easiest in a beloved face, she said gently. Remember that where you go. He tried to spit at her and lacked the strength. Mara, he whispered, whether curse or prayer he did not know. Then he died. The villagers found the house 3 days later after the mists lifted. There was no witch, only an abandoned shack on stilts, empty for years. No bed, no candles, no herbs, no body save Garin Vale's, lying in rotten boards with throat cut and eyes fixed wide upon the rafters. His armor was stacked neatly beside him, his weapons cleaned. Around his corpse, arranged in a careful circle, lay dried lavender tied with blue ribbon. Fenmir burned the shack to pilings and thanked every saint in order. The killings in nearby lands did not cease. As for Garin, some say he was foolish to fall for glamour. Others say no charm was needed. That grief itself can conjure any ghost required. On moonless nights in marsh country, hunters still claim to smell lavender where no flowers grow. Wise men turn back when they do.